Welcome back, everyone, to the Games Are Beautiful podcast. I'm your host, Monkee.
Quill.
Saturn.
So today we're going to talk about kind of the idea of what is horror and what is suspense in terms of video games, and how do they look different, and what is it that kind of the unique hurdles that video games have to deal with compared to, say, books and movies and whatnot. So, kind of the definition that I'm working from here is horror is essentially the primary goal of horror is to provoke fear, whether it's through a lack of understanding or drawing upon people's innate fears and phobias and things of that nature. Whereas suspense and thrillers are kind of a related idea, but they're more about people kind of having a lack of resources and a lack of time and having to make hard decisions about what they need to do and where they need to go. Okay, so
I get things right now.
yeah, that's okay. So just kind of kick things off. What would you say are some of your favorites in either of these categories, whether it's horror or suspense?
Are we talking just for video games, or since we're doing all of it, any media?
If you're having trouble thinking of things for video games, you can do any media as well, so we can kind of bounce things off of that as well.
Okay. I personally am a huge fan of Inside, which I'm pretty sure would count as it's a little bit of both, but I think it leans more towards suspense.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure. And I don't really do a lot of horror stuff in general. BioShock, I guess, is a lot of fun, which again kind of sits on a little Venn diagram of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they definitely tend to share traits with each other, so there's definitely going to be some overlap.
Yeah. I'm not personally a huge fan of horror in general, just because I can read it and that's about it. Anything else, and I'm just I end up being super tense and uncomfortable for the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But suspense, the Nerve movie, ton of fun. Love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
I still need to
got
see
it
that
for Christmas. So.
I really need to see that. My sister watched it, and she said it was amazing. And also, you said it was amazing, so.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Give me a minute. I'm looking through just the list of games that I have. It's what?
Mm-hmm.
What of those games?
Yeah, I'd say even though it's not necessarily a Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, even though it in and of itself isn't a horror game, it's more just a kind of RPG with some kind of dark themes and tone to it. There's one specific section of it where you, without really telling you what's going on, basically you go and visit this hotel at one point during the game, and the hotel is haunted, and it's probably just all of the things that are going on inside the hotel is very creepy and very weird, and even as a vampire, you're I don't know what I can do about this. So there's this constant feeling of what is about to happen in this hotel.
Yeah, I remember that. Remember that part because all the while you're walking around, you hear just sort of childish voices whispering to you. It's don't go in there.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that, and it builds it up to the point, builds up to a point where you're you enter a kitchen and then suddenly dishes are just flying everywhere, just clanging over everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess one of the more recent ones I've played is Layers of Fear, which is kind of kind of a bit of a toss-up between the two because it's with the game, like basically it's like a game that's sort of like PT where you're kind of just wandering around looking at things
Right. Mm-hmm.
and kind of just taking in the story and just being frightened by what's going on around you. So it's one of those things where it's like it uses horror elements, but I guess it's more of a suspense game because you're just kind of kept on your toes the whole time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Just because you're like bracing yourself for what happens next.
Yeah, it's not necessarily trying to scare you. It's just there's just always something going on where you're like, okay, what's going to happen next?
Oh, I guess when I was a kid, my friend and and I'm pretty sure like a good version of this was just like we were small children and easily scared. My friend and I used to play the Nancy Drew games, and Blackmore Manor was like we could not play that alone. Like there was all these tunnels that you had to like go through, like in the house, like secret tunnels in the house, and you got. At first, they gave you, like, a glow stick, and then later on, like, you got, like, rocks, because the glow sticks would die eventually, and, like, this rock would glow forever, but it was, like, this eerie green color, and it made everything worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of remember having a similar experience with The Seventh Guest back when I was a kid. If you've never played that one, basically the premise is it's not even clear who you are exactly. You just, for some reason, you end up in this mansion with this kind of eccentric toy maker, and you explore the mansion, and basically, as you're solving puzzles and whatnot, you're getting videos of people that died in the manor and whatnot, and apparently the toy maker had some great secret, and he was children were dying in the village and stuff like that. But I like go back to it now, and it's just like instead of being scary, it's just all really campy full motion video, and like this I was terrified of this as a child.
Well, I mean, I would be too.
It's really funny because there's like some things where it's like it's not that scary unless like I don't know. Like if you think about it, it really shouldn't be that scary, but it is, kind of thing. I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of stuff like that, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just on like the topic of older games, like I did sort of have that experience with the Colonel's Bequest, which is like just a very old Sierra game. Where it's like just like a sort of like a mystery game that's sort of Nancy Drew-esque.
Right. Yeah.
And like you're this. Like I can't remember the main character's name, but she's sort of like
Laura Bow or Bow.
Laura Bow. Yeah, there's like there were a couple of games about her, but yeah, it's like you're just like a college girl in her 20s who's invited to her friend's grandfather's manor.
And something like that. Yeah.
It's sort of like a Clue sort of story where it's like all the while you're trying to like just people are suddenly being killed off because they want like they're all after the Colonel's wealth, which is like basically everyone's called there because it's like I'm finishing my will, and everyone's just trying to kill each other off so they can probably get bigger cuts or something. And hold on guys, I'm doing a podcast right now. So
hey Cyrus.
They say hello. So so what was I saying? It's like it's not really one of those like it's not really a horror game, but it's like really suspenseful because you're like going around trying to figure out what the hell is going on, who's doing this,
right?
And it kind of just builds up to the point where you get to the attic and you'll see just like a pile of bodies, which like it's like a really old Sierra game, like wasn't like VGA at that point, so it wasn't quite far in VGA, so it was
yeah, that's still when I think that was still the era of 16 colors, but they had made the pixels smaller,
Yeah. That's basically where it was. Like, it wasn't quite where they got to the point of like the voice acted King's Quest and Leisure Suit Larry games.
Yeah.
Okay, but to be fair, as children, our standards for voice acting were so much lower.
Right.
Oh yeah,
For
definitely.
True.
everything, we're so much. I know this because my brother and I recently decided to go replay some of Sonic Adventure Battle 2, and we didn't
That was
have
going to be my
problem with
next
it for
example.
children, but it's actually painful to watch the cutscenes now.
Yeah. Although,
lip sync the flab.
yeah, some of it was really bad, but like probably one of my favorite games of all time that I played when I was younger was what was it? Quest for Glory 4, and this kind of brings all of this in too. It was pretty much the only. It was basically for those of you who haven't played it, it was basically a combination of role playing game and adventure game. So whenever there were puzzles in the game, you basically chose to be either a fighter, a mage, or a thief, and depending on what character you were, would determine what kind of approach you would have. So, like, if you had a door in front of you, the mage would try to cast a spell, the thief would try to pick the lock, and the fighter would just try to kick down the door, kind of thing. But kind of getting back to what you were talking about is that actually the narrator for that one was John Rhys Davies, and it was actually Jennifer Hale's first performance as a voice actor in a video game. So that one was actually really stellar.
Have you guys ever seen anything of like the Phantasmagoria games?
I've played the original a couple times.
Yeah. I haven't seen a lot of the first one, but I've seen like several playthroughs of the second one,
Mhm.
and that is just a great example of like a really campy horror game that's just really stereotypical of just like all of the full motion video games.
Yeah, the second one especially, that's not a game you should ever play. It's a game you should go watch on YouTube and be like, this is like a B horror movie. I understand.
That's how I watched it.
What game is this?
Yeah, Phantasmagoria 2, Puzzle of the Flesh.
Like, the story was okay, but it's just super campy.
Yeah, there was just a lot of weird stuff going on with that one. The original, I would say, is a lot better in terms of just being being an actual horror game.
Yeah.
But the original definitely had some pacing problems because it was like it really draws you in right at the beginning, but then it just kind of, the pacing's a little weird, and then it falls off very sharply right at the end. You're just like, oh, well, that was disappointing.
Which one is this?
The
Second?
original.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, on the topic of pacing, I think one of so I don't really mention I'm not a huge horror fan, but when I do like read it and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I've watched a couple, played a couple. I mostly do horror like unwillingly kicking and screaming, or like in very small doses.
Sorry.
Like I can watch like Don't Blink from Doctor Who, and that's like kind of
That's
my
your
quota.
limit. That's your upper threshold.
Don't look away.
I don't like things where I'm just gonna end up sitting like not. I don't know. I don't have fun with horror, I guess. Like, suspense is fine, but horror is just not fun for me.
That's fair, because I'm kind of the same way. I tend to be, I generally don't like to intentionally scare myself with games. I prefer that kind of, like, if it has, like, dark themes and weird mysteries and stuff like that, that's all great, but, like, intentionally trying to scare me, I'm not okay with.
Yeah. Like, I love dark themes. Like, dark and, like, scary themes are great. Like, it's awesome. Like, BioShock, just, like, walking around the environment is one of, like, the coolest things ever. But I do not, like, I play games with, like, kind of a singular intensity. It's a little bit ridiculous. Like,
Yes.
I play BioShock with Saturn. I sucked him into my little bubble of, like, intense terror. So, like, things that were not usually scary to him were freaking him out. But that's just kind of how I end up playing a lot of games. And I'm, like, when I do play video games, I'm bad enough at them that it's just like, I don't need an extra sense of like inability because I have that all
I
by
have that
myself.
already. It's like I'll just work through that on my own.
Like the games that I do know, like I can get pretty good at games, but I just don't practice with anything. So like you hand me an Xbox controller and I'm like, it's been like 6 years since I've even looked at one of these things.
I think I remember how this works.
I'm like, I will
You get
always
used
be
to-
able to play GameCube. Like, if you hand me a GameCube controller, I will always be able to play GameCube. But
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I have the problem too where I'm just like the muscle memory for like a type of controller is just ingrained in my mind, and if I try to go to a different one, it's like, wait a minute, how do I do this?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I have a 3DS and I use an Xbox controller for my computer, but if I'm switching between the two, they use all of the same buttons, but the positions are switched. So it's
Yeah.
just like no, this is wrong. What's going on here?
Oh yeah, A and B are inverted, and then X and Y are
Yeah.
inverted.
Hmm.
I really, really want I really, really want to play on the Switch, but I was looking at the controllers, like, it's, like, got, like, the keypad, and then, like, the joystick, and on the other side, it's, like, the joystick, and then the keypad, or vice versa, whatever, and I was
Yeah.
like, I would have to, like, learn how to make my hands move in this direction, because...
Yeah, Nintendo has kind of done that quite a few times.
Well, but from what I've heard, like once you get the hang of it, it's actually like a really great system. And then if you have it like just the two joysticks and not like attached to anything, there's even more buttons on the inside.
Yeah.
I was like,
Oh.
I'd love to learn how to play it, but man, would there be a learning curve.
Yeah, the
Let's-
Switch is going to be an interesting animal when it comes out.
Yeah, from what
Fingers
I've heard,
crossed.
it's actually like really, really fun to play on.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Like, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it'll be successful because I just really like Nintendo and I want them to do well in everything they do. So
Yeah, well, I think a big kind of where they kind of had problems with like the Wii U was the company as a whole wasn't really good at working with third-party developers, and that's really where a system's going to be successful.
hmm
Yeah. Well, I mean, plus just like the Wii U itself was not really, and I mean, it was in some ways, but in a lot of ways, it was just the Wii again. Like,
Right.
there wasn't really an upgrade that happened there.
Right, yeah, exactly. It was just like, oh, here's a controller with a view screen. Cool, what does
Yeah.
that do for me? Probably
Yeah.
When
nothing.
they were marketing it at first, that's what everyone thought it was. Like, oh, it's just like a different controller, and then that'll give you the opportunity to play some different games on it. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
Plus,
What-
I
And then
mean,
no one bought it.
Mhm.
also, like, they didn't have a Zelda game. They didn't have... What's the other thing that... I don't know, like, I played the Smash Bros. Game that came out with the Wii U, and I was not impressed. Like...
Well, yeah,
and
that's
there were some parts of it that were cool, but then they nerfed half of their characters, and
yeah. The Smash community, the new one is very divisive. They're like, we don't know about that one. We'll go back to our GameCube.
yeah,
Yeah, everyone loves Melee. For some
Mhm.
reason. I'm not really at all familiar with the competitive scene, but
Yeah, the competitive scene's a weird animal. If you ever watch it at like Evo or something like that.
yeah,
It's-
I've watched a tournament.
Mhm.
Like it was against, I think it was Armada and Hungry Box actually.
Mhm.
But anyway, but yeah, like I like the newer Smash Bros. But then again, I've only played it on 3DS, and
Yeah.
I only like it mainly because Mega Man. I like how Mega Man controls.
yeah.
I might
No,
be in
like
the
they have
minority
like
for that.
a lot of really super cool like characters and stuff, and I thought that was awesome. Like, and I played as a couple of them. And I was like, they're good, but I'm not a huge fan of like the Wii remotes in general, like enough to be like, oh yeah, this is the most amazing thing ever, and I work them perfectly. And then the characters that I did normally play all got like severely nerfed. Like
Yeah.
Pit was just a disaster.
Mm.
Yeah, controls completely different.
Yeah, and I was not actually weirdly. I liked it better when I was super excited when Sheik and Zelda separated because I play as Sheik a lot.
Yeah.
And weirdly, it was worse. I was like, can I go back to having Zelda? I never play as Zelda when I play as Sheik, but weirdly, I liked it better when they were together than when they were apart.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It's been a while, but I think like her down B turned into like something really weird. I was just not a huge fan.
What, with the new one?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the latest one.
Oddly enough, I haven't played the newer Smash in I think a year now, and I've never touched Zelda or Sheik, and if I did, I've already forgotten what they do.
Yeah, I never owned it, but one of the houses over at Whitworth was basically a gaming theme house, and a lot of times, like after gaming club, we would go over there and play Smash till whatever hour in the morning.
Yeah.
I would always play as Zero Suit Samus, and it was always terrible, but I loved it.
Those are the best characters. The ones where you're like, I have no idea what's going on. Somebody save me from myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most fun, though. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. I think that was always like my favorite part of Smash Bros. Was like picking up a character that you'd never really played before and going like, well, this is gonna be a disaster. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just be like let's do it just like as like a party game. It's like, let's do this character now.
Yeah.
Let's see how this goes.
I have no idea what's about to happen. Let's see.
We did that a couple times. Like when we'd have friends over, we're like, all right, so now everybody has to pick a character that they've either never played before, or they've played, and you know for a fact that you're shit at them.
Uh-huh.
Let's see how this works.
Let's see how this goes.
Or we'd have like 2 people playing at a time and just have them play against like level like 9 CPUs. Like, all right, so.
How the hell do I do this? Well, good luck.
Yeah.
I'm also making it very clear that I'm a filthy casual when it comes to games like that.
Oh, dude, all the way. I'm sorry. You picked like the most casual child to come to this podcast.
That's fine. It's just like in my gaming kind of history, so to speak. Like I've been all over the place with stuff. Like I've had an actual subscription to Big Fish Games at one point that I loved, and I've also played every AAA title that's come out for the last however many years. So I totally understand.
Yeah. No, I play games, both board games and video games, and computer, and pretty much anything. Apparently I've done this since I was a child. My mom told me I did this with Freddy Fish games. I don't remember. I will play a game until I figure out how to play it and or beat it, and then I will be bored and never come back.
Yeah. Just like, okay, I got this. Moving on.
I like storylines, and games that like are constantly shifting, like, I don't know, Dominion? Great.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I get bored and move on with my life.
Sentinels of the Multiverse.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I can understand that.
Like I played those games, like the Freddy Fish games, like inside and out when I was a kid, but also at the time I had like 2 of them, so I would just play them inside and out because those were the only games that I had and was old enough to understand how to play.
Yeah.
Like we had Myst, but the most I could do to play that game at that age was literally just not play, just sit in my dad's lap and like point at things. It's like, hey, click on that thing, see what happens. And like, of course, he knew that would do jack shit, but he did it anyway.
Don't you just love it when your parents indulge you? They're like, you're stupid, but I'll do this for you anyways.
Yeah, I laughed at like the silliest things with that game. Like he'd press a button and like a door would like swing open, and that would just crack me up for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, back to the topic. We're so off topic
We
today.
should probably get back to talking about
fine.
suspense and horror games.
That's right. Valere brought up a good point with Darkest Dungeon.
Yeah, I was going to mention that actually.
That one's kind of interesting in a lot of ways because it's not only does it's kind of drawing on that whole Lovecraftian idea of cosmic horror that A, you can't necessarily fight per se, and B, you can't, just even trying to understand it is going to drive you mad. So
it's like the characters in the game if you wait too long.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and like the thing about like Cthulhu and stuff like that is a lot of people end up having you like fight Cthulhu when they do those kinds of games, and it's like it's kind of purpose defeating.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to be able to fight like the dark god. Like that's not how that's supposed to work.
You're not really supposed to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like with Darkest Dungeon, it's not really a game where it's like you're gonna fight, you're gonna fight for it. It's like, no, you're basically just gonna survive and then hope that something good comes out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know what at some point I want to just like sit down and do like a complete playthrough of it, because like if you haven't seen the opening cutscene, basically it's implied that whoever your narrator is shot himself in the head, and whoever's talking to you, I'm not sure who that is, or if I'm alive, or if I'm dead, or what's going on here exactly.
Like I just assumed it's like.
I need to go watch that one. Like it has been
Yeah,
forever
just-
since I've seen that
Yeah,
one.
just go look up Darkest Dungeon intro and just watch it and be like, huh. Yeah, and the guy that's talking in the intro is your narrator throughout the game.
But
Yeah,
also,
I assumed like the caretaker was talking at the beginning, but just from looking at his portrait in game, like when you look at, I can't remember what menu it was. It was like, I guess like the manor menu or something like that, or like the obituaries. He's just sitting there and he's just got this like really deranged look. It's like, well, he's gone. And then just the voice in your head is like, I pictured it as you are sort of the overseer of the hamlet, like you're the quote unquote mayor who's just like hiring people to go.
Yeah.
And then the voice in your head is literally just like you're getting to the point that the caretaker is.
Yeah, well, it's implied that you're some sort of family member. That you came back to the manor and it's just in shambles and broken, and oh yeah, I let Cthulhu out of the basement kind of thing.
like it's one step up from Pandora's box. It's like I didn't release all the horrors into the world. I released the horror into the world.
Yes.
Pandora's house. Or Pandora's basement, I guess. Needless to say, I never got very far in that game, and I haven't played it since like the summer. I should really get back on that.
Yeah, they're actually doing an update in next couple months, I think, where they're going to add in a new kind of like Van Helsing sort of character, you know, kind of a monster hunter, vampire slayer sort of thing, and they're going to add vampires into the game as new enemies and all that. So I'll probably get back into it when they do that update just to see what's going on with it now.
I might do that too. I did that with Crypt of the Necrodancer just this last week as well. I was like, oh, they're coming up with new DLC. I should probably finish that game.
Yeah, Crypt of the Necrodancer. That one's funny because it's like that's like something you would expect to be like a horror game, and it's not at all. It's like this happy dungeon crawl.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I feel like trope inversions are always some of the weirdest things. Like a game where you pick it up and you're like, this does not look like a horror thing, and then it's a horror thing, or vice versa. It's like, this looks like it's going to be a horror thing, and then it's not. Like, okay, so when my sister and I went to go watch, what's it called? Nerve. We're sitting in the theater, and like all of the pre-movie trailers are all horror movies, and both of us hate horror movies. Like we literally hear, I was like, "So what movie do you want to go see?" And she's like, "Well, Dave Franco's in Nerve, so we should go see that one." I was like, "Okay, sure," but we knew like nothing about this movie except for having watched the trailer on the way there, and So we both look at each other while all these trailers are playing, like, oh shit, what have we done? It's like neither of us like horror movies. We're like, if this is a horror movie, I'm going to cry. Like, I will be so sad. And it wasn't, and I was very impressed.
Mhm.
But
This was a terrible idea. Why did we do this?
Like from looking at the marketing, you would not gather that it's like a suspenseful thing. You'd think it's just like oh, it's just a prank and shit like
I mean,
that.
like,
But
a little bit, you can kind of tell it's going to be suspenseful. Like, maybe a couple of scenes. Like, there's going to be a scene where they're driving on a motorcycle or something. It's like, yeah, okay. But I was thinking it was going to be more like, I don't know, action than suspense.
Yeah.
like they get in trouble with the law because they do something a little bit too risky, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now that you bring up kind of the kind of tropin versions and things like that, reminds me of Spec Ops: The Line, which is interesting because it initially seems just like a normal third-person shooter sort of thing, modern military shooter. But then over time, everything just starts to slowly unravel, and you're like, what is happening?
Wait, doesn't that game have like branching paths as well?
Not really. Sort of.
Like I thought I saw a video. It's like this was just like a really clickbaity thing. It's like the top 10 most fucked up scenes in video games, something like that. And there was like a thing from Spec Ops: The Line. I don't know if you might want to put spoilers.
Yeah, actually, I forgot to talk about, because in order to talk about Spec Ops: The Line at all, you have to talk about the weird and terrible things that happen.
Yeah.
Spoiler
Okay.
banner.
Spoiler banner.
Yes. You have been warned.
Banner. Okay. Wait, am I clear to talk now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I could be completely wrong. This might even not be from this game, but I remember seeing a scene from a game that's like that, where it's like a bunch of people walk into a room where it's like we got the enemy, and then they walk inside. There's just a bunch of refugees that are just dead, and their bodies are just sort of like desecrated by, I guess, chemicals that are in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like a really unfortunate scene where it's just like, we just killed a bunch of innocent people.
Yeah.
This is horrible. And all the characters are like freaking out and fighting with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's...
Well,
oh, go ahead.
isn't Spec Ops the one where, like, at the end you find out, like, you were the bad guy or whatever all along?
Yeah, kind of. It's also kind of a adaptation of Apocalypse Now, if you've ever seen that movie, which is also an adaptation of, I think, Heart of Darkness. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it draws like all of the
Seriously?
parallels from that book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like Vietnam, it's Heart of Darkness, but instead of being in in Africa, it's during the Vietnam War.
Right. Yeah, this one takes place in some sort of basically a fictional Middle Eastern location. Or no, it actually takes place in Dubai. Is where it's basically Dubai in like the sandstorm of the century. So like everybody's stuck in the city.
If it's supposed to be like an adaptation of Heart of Darkness, I might actually pick it up because I actually kind of liked that book.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting in terms of like Walker and kind of his descent into madness.
Like I like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like with most shooters, I kind of stay away. But if it's story based, and then like just the shooter aspect is just the way that the game is played, I will play that.
That's kind of how Spec Ops is. I mean, you do have to have some ability with third-person shooters, but it's very much about dealing with the horrors of war and what happens when people are on your same side, but you have to fight them anyhow, and things like that, and just and what happens when you have to make a decision, but it was a wrong decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and okay, so are we done with the spoilers, by the way?
I think we're if we're moving on from Spec Ops, I'll take off the spoilers.
Much better.
There we go.
I think one of the biggest things that, like, I don't play horror video games, but every once in a while I'll watch bits and pieces, and I think, with exceptions, there are exceptions to this, but also from what I understand of, which one's getting a new game right now? Shit. Resident Evil? No.
Resident Evil? Yeah, number 7 is about to come out.
This next week, actually.
Yeah.
Like the later installments in that series. Like, apparently the new game's going back to their roots, but almost
the new game's kind of veering off in its own direction. It's not even going back to its roots from what we've seen.
Well,
it's not Resident Evil 5 or 6.
Right. Gameplay wise, like, I think the biggest thing that I see when I see horror games that end up being action games with a horror setting kind of style, like, I've seen a couple of them because they're not scary.
Right.
Are when you give your character a gun, specifically like anything that's like above a pistol, like, it's really, really, because I think also partially because like first person shooters like Call of Duty and all of that exist, but like when you give your character a gun, especially in first person shooters, people tend to have like a sense of empowerment because typically in that situation they're about to go do, I don't know, like stick up a bank or something like that's really empowering that they've never done before. And kind of that, even though it's in a different setting, I feel like part of that mindset transfers over to like when you try doing that in a horror game and you give somebody a gun, and then it's like, well, you can't have a disempowerment story and then give somebody a gun and like have it operate like a normal like action hero game gun and expect that to work, because they cancel each other out, and then it's not a horror game.
Right. That's kind of the problem I had with Dead Space.
They did it with the third one mainly. It wasn't as horror centric.
Well, yeah. Well, personally, I had that problem with kind of the whole game because with all of them in the series. The third one was a big departure. That was basically just a third-person shooter at that point with some evil alien monsters. But with the first one in particular, like for me, the scariest part of the game was like the initial few scenes where you're coming upon you basically crash land onto this, you basically end up crashing into the ship that you're trying to repair, and you have to explore around a bit, and you find out there's these horrible monsters that have shown up for whatever reason, and you don't have any equipment at that point, so you're basically just running away and hiding from everything until you find yourself a gun, which is basically like
it was like a blowtorch, basically.
Yeah, basically he's an engineer that adapts all these different tools into weapons. But yeah, for me, once I got a weapon, it was just like, okay, this is no longer horror. This is just this is suspense, and I just need to, once you figure out that like the monsters come out of the vents and they tend to try and come up behind you and things like that, it's just like, okay, yeah, I understand what's going on here. There's like a rational like thought pattern to what's going on. It's not like, and I can deal with the problems that I have.
Yeah, I think there's two things. One, I would really love to see a horror game where they give you like just a pistol, and it's like a crappy pistol where it's like it's got like 6 shots and you're always out of ammo. And like, I would love to see a horror game where they gave you a gun and actually it was scary. But
well, if you play the original Silent Hill, that's very much like that. It's like you do have the ability to fight things off, but it's more like you're just kind of staving off the inevitable. It's like it's better to figure out what's going on rather than trying to fight the things.
Like, you can't really shoot to kill, because then you're gonna run out of ammo. It's like you shoot it to like stun it, and then you use that window to just run away.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
There was one example, just like another game where it's like it's a first-person shooter, but it's like it's a horror game where you feel powerful even when you have a gun. It's Cry of Fear, which is it was like a Half-Life 1 mod that became a standalone thing a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Which is like, that is one of the more bizarre horror games I've ever played. But it's one of those things where you have weapons, but you have very little ammo pretty much at all times. So it's like you're afraid to even use the gun because you're afraid that you'll I mean, this is how it was for me. It's like I really hope that nothing pops up on me because I know for a fact that I'll be wasting ammo that I could be using on something that's a lot stronger.
Right, exactly.
And a lot of this stuff just jumps at you as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh crap! Now I'm running from a guy with a chainsaw that can't be killed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the second thing. Like, I feel like, and I don't like I said, I don't really play horror games, so I don't know how many do this. But if you have a predictable system, it's not really scary. Like, because that's just, you can have all the jump scares in the world, but as long as you're always like, okay, every single time I walk past this specific corridor, there's going to be something down there. Eventually, it's just, okay, it's just a part of the game. It's not really... Whereas, like, it's like only sometimes when you walk down the corridor, there's something down there. Like, that's a lot more terrifying than, like, there's always a thing who's going to kill you here.
Yeah. There's actually an interesting example of this are the Left 4 Dead games.
Oh god.
Yeah, because essentially what it's like a zombie survival game where you're working with your friends to get whatever objective you're trying to go to. But what's kind of on that same idea is they have this AI system called the Director, and that depending on how you're doing, whether you're doing well or doing poorly, it'll randomly spawn enemies and special zombies and things, so you never actually know where the zombies are going to come from. So there's actually a genuine sense of, oh my goodness, what is going on? There are too many zombies, run away.
So, like, the better you do, the more zombies show up?
Yeah. Or they'll show up, or you'll get a special zombie, or they'll show up in places that they normally won't.
You can just not win with that game, can you?
No, because if you try to fight all the zombies, you're gonna run out of ammo and you're gonna die. You basically have to clear yourself a path for the most part and get to a safe house.
That was a thing that a lot of us did. A lot of my friends and I did wrong whenever we played it. Like, we would try killing everything and then moving on.
Yeah.
Like, at most, we'd leave like one or two left, but
well, and one
most
thing
of the time
that
we try to wipe everything out.
Yeah.
yeah, and one thing that video games, well, kind of anything, but I feel like video games have a better, like, is playing on people's expectations. Like, you play into, like, most people when confronted with a room with, like, a whole bunch of chests or something in it, like, your first gaming instinct is to go and check all the chests to see if there's stuff in it that can help you.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, I don't know if games do this a lot, but, like, to play on that and then be like, well, actually, it's a really bad idea to check all the chests in here because some of them might kill you. Like, some of them might be useful, but some of them might kill you. Yeah,
that reminds me of a playthrough I was watching of Dodger as she was playing Dark Souls. And this the first time this had ever happened to her. She went to open a chest, and it basically it turned into what's called a mimic, which is basically a monster that pretends to look like a chest. So it, like, basically jumped out and bit her, and she was like
terrifying.
Yeah. So for like the next half hour, she would not even go near a chest. She's just like, nope, not doing it.
Funny thing is, like, the first time I saw that, I was actually watching one of Strippin's videos where, like, he was trying to get like to a chest, like, that was like just buy some golems that were just like, this was in like the Orlando area, and there's chests at the end, and they're like these big just like stone giants guarding things. He's like rolling past them, okay, open the chest, open, just, oh fuck, it's a mimic, and just kept getting eaten.
Yep.
Thing is, this is such crap, but in that game there was actually a way to differentiate like the mimics from the chest, because if you look at the Saturn, there'd be a chain, and if they were in a curve, they were normal, but if they were a mimic, the chain would just be straight out. Dark Souls 3, it's a like it's a toss up. Like, you don't know what you're gonna get, so you literally just have to like strike You have to like
just
strike the
start
chest.
hitting all of them. All right,
Just
are you
start
alive?
hitting-
No.
Just start hitting the chest and hope that
Hey,
it's
can I
fine.
just say there are some things where it's like if you did this in real life, it would be like so hilarious and strange. Just like every time you see a test, you're just like, boom. Nope, it's okay.
Hey, if the chest tried to actually eat me, I'd do that too. Be like, nope, I'm checking
Oh,
this
no,
time.
I would be right there with you. Like, quick, somebody put a bullet in the chest. See if it.
Out of context, D&D.
Mhm.
Yes.
Right, wait a minute.
True enough. True enough.
Cool. I'm posting what a mimic looks like.
Hmm. One of many possible interpretations.
Yeah. But just in Dark
Oh my
Souls.
god.
Like that's what they look like in Dark Souls. It's like
They
you
look
open up the
really
chest,
terrifying.
like arms pop out and like drag you in and just start chomping on you.
Yeah. You mind putting the link in the chat?
Okay.
Should be good.
Again,
So, like, is that like
In the Twitch
a
chat.
person that it's eating,
In the
or is
Twitch-
it actually
Yeah,
have
so
a
everybody
body?
can see it.
okay. Where is the image? Okay.
Way to go! I lost it. It's gone.
Keeps moving around my desktop.
Going forever and ever. That's terrifying.
Oh, did it? Where are you?
I don't know.
Why are things
I
with tongues?
dragged it to the
So-
screen and it just like took me to a page and just took me away from the actual stream.
Well, while Saturn's working through his technical issues, um, uh, kind of going back to the new Resident Evil, kind of what I was getting at with 7 being a big departure from the others is, at least from what I've seen in terms of gameplay and whatnot that people have done so far, of like the preview builds. I would categorize like all of the other Resident Evil games as suspense, because you do have there are these creatures that you're dealing with, but you're pretty much always armed and you always have some means of fighting them, or at least getting them out of your way. Whereas 7 seems very much like you're playing in a horror movie and you're inside of this haunted house and all sorts of just weird and strange things are happening to you.
Like at the time that and Silent Hill came out, like they were on the same time. There was like people were like, which one's better? And like I guess Silent Hill is the horror game and Resident Evil is the suspense game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the chat is being difficult and is actually not letting me click on anything, and it's still buffering.
Okay.
Like-
All right. No,
Like
no
the,
worries.
like the window at the side is buffering. So
Okay. No worries.
so sorry guys.
Okay. But yeah, it's actually kind of Resident Evil's kind of funny because it was actually inspired by and large by a game called Alone in the Dark.
Yeah.
Which is another horror. That one was definitely a horror game in kind of the same. Basically, use the Cthulhu mythos and dealing with those sort of horrors, and be like, it was the kind of game where you would try and walk out the front door, and the front door would eat you. You're like, okay, literally everything is trying to kill me in here.
That's kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't know, Okay, but like at some point, like what is it just scary and what is it just like everything is attacking you though? Like I feel like that's a balance that most people are really shitty at.
Yeah, I think that distinction's important, and it's also like if you're ever at a point where you constantly know what your enemy looks like and whatnot, you've kind of moved away from horror at that point, because a lot of horror is like, okay,
The unknown.
Yeah. Who am I dealing with? What am I dealing with? Why does this not make sense to me? And things of that nature. So as soon as you do, that's kind of like the problem I had with the original Phantasmagoria, is because towards the end you see what it is that's been haunting you, and you're just like, oh, this isn't scary anymore. This is a chase scene, basically.
Horror reveals are like actually the worst thing though, because when they show you what the thing that they've been like quietly haunting you from the corners is, it's like, well, I mean, first of all, you lose any and all replay value you had. And half the time it looks stupid.
Yeah, it's like whatever you were imagining is much worse than what they created more times than not.
Yeah.
What was the, like, in old movies and stuff, the monsters always used to be like really vague shapes in the fog because that's all they could do. Like, they didn't have CGI effects. They didn't have, and it was like the camera quality was crappier. Now it's like you could see the individual beads of sweat on a person's face from 20 feet out kind of quality of cameras, and they CGI in a monster, and it's just like, I'm sorry, it's not scary. Like, it's scary because of what it's done, necessarily, but like, it's not scary because of how it looks. Because, I mean, like, if you think about it, like, the things that scare you are not, like, I'm not scared of the image of a werewolf or a vampire or whatever. Like, those are not what are scary to me when I look at them. But, like, clowns scare the hell out of me. Like,
Yeah.
like,
that was an issue.
People, like, tend to associate, like, this dark, creepy, like, this is what is scary. It's like, no, it's not. It's really, it's not. Like, making something darker does not inherently make it scarier. Like, I think some of the scariest things ever are when it's, like, small, cute, bright thing. Like, I don't know, Madoka Magica's QB or something like that. Like, those kinds of things are scary.
Like a creepy little kid. Like, you don't expect it to be scary, but, like, good God. Like, what are you?
Yeah, it's like in a lot of those, like, especially like you bring up like vampires and werewolves, like, those things aren't scary because of what they are. They're scary because of what they represent. Like, a werewolf represents this idea that a completely small silent children. Yes.
Yeah, that was an issue that I had with the movie. Did you guys see the Babadook at any point?
I don't think so. No.
It was a Netflix horror movie. It was pretty good. Like that. That was one of those movies that kind of built up what this creature is, and like throughout it, you kind of see sort of like artist interpretations. Like, basically, it's centered around this storybook about this creature called the Babadook, which is like this really tall, lanky man in a hat with like a very disturbing looking face. And once the reveal, like, and just over the course of the movie, like, you see that this thing is sort of just sort of interfering with their lives, and you don't see it, and you just see its effects, and you become scared of it just more and more over the course. Then it gets to the reveal, and it's literally just a man in a hat.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're freaky, but that's kind of underwhelming.
Yeah.
Okay, but like, here's the thing. So with characters, a lot of the times they're not scary because like you've seen it before or whatever. But if you do want to, if you absolutely must horror reveal your character, right? Like, people always make their characters, like their horror monsters, like anatomically correct or whatever for the monster. Like, they'll have like, the mimics are scary. Yes, there is like a tongue that's like this big on it. Like, that's just gross. But like, I feel like if you want a character that you like are gonna do a horror reveal, you should put it, like, I don't know, in the Uncanny Valley or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's way scarier than like a salivating monster with fangs and claws.
Yeah, that's
like in real life, if I was actually facing a salivating monster with fangs and claws, I would be concerned. Yes, I would probably be scared. But and video games do have a step up from like TV shows and movies and books and stuff, in that like you are actually interacting with it. But at the same time, we've seen it like 1,000 million bajillion times at this point. Like, it's not. It lost some of its effect. I think it's part of the reason, like, if you look at, like, I don't know, like anything coming out of Asia horror wise
Mm-hmm.
is like a little bit scarier than like bad Asian horror and bad like American horror. Bad Asian horror wins because all of their stuff is based around Asian mythos, which we don't see a lot of comparatively to like European mythos.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's just different enough that it's we're not like all inoculated to it.
Yeah, that's why stuff like the Fatal Frame games and stuff like that always unnerved me, because it's like, and the game Dread Out, which is kind of newish, because those games like all of the ghosts in that were like based on like just like old folk tales from, it was like Japan, Indonesia, China, like those areas.
I mean, like, because if like, and I've done a bit of research on this before, but like, there are like really weird things in European mythos that exist, like just like really creepy, but most Asian mythos characters are like, they're either good or they're bad or they're just trying to eat you. Whereas a lot of Asian mythos characters are like, will trick you and try and steal your soul. Will hide from you and try and steal your soul. Will like will eat your dreams. Will like they're just, European mythos tends to be more towards like will physically harm you, whereas Asian mythos tends to be more towards like the spiritual creepy side of like that kind of harm. Okay. And it's a different kind of horror. It's a little bit like differently evocative, but it's not something that we've seen a lot. So in European mythos-based games,
it falls a little bit more into the uncanny valley than a lot of European stuff does, I think, because a lot of the stuff you see is very human.
Yeah.
Like,
or very not anything, like the no face stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of The Witcher 3. There's a I'll throw up the spoilers for folks.
I think I know what you're talking about, though.
It has to do with a specific quest, and in one of the mainline quests, you go to what's basically this local ruler, and he's being essentially possessed or haunted by something, and the thing that's haunting him is the way it works is it basically like feeds on his dreams and negative desires and things like that. And there's basically like two ways to get rid of it. You basically either you have the person who's haunted basically like sit in the basement and do a ritual with them until they basically more or less almost die, so that the creature has to leave its body. Or you have to...
You exercise it.
Yeah. Which will probably kill the person in question. Or you have to somehow trick the creature into thinking that you've done something terrible, so that it'll possess you, but when it realizes you haven't done something wrong, it has to leave.
Yeah, like, wasn't that path that's like you had to basically fake that you were killing a newborn baby?
Basically, yeah.
It's like, oh, the oven wasn't on, or something like that. The Bloody Baron's unborn child.
No, that's specifically what I'm referring to as the Heim over in Skellige. The unborn child is its own. Witcher 3 actually has a lot of interesting horror moments, because the Baron's unborn child becomes this creature called a botchling, which is basically it looks like a baby, but it's like covered in blood, and it has these like sharp fangs, and it's like has this umbilical cord wrapped around it.
It looks like a dead baby.
Yeah, well, it looks like a dead baby, but it also looks like it could bite your head off as well.
Yeah.
So it's very disturbing little creature.
Okay, then I don't think I saw that quest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Holy
remember that.
crap! Yeah, that is.
That was definitely one of the more interesting ones because he basically has to. He either has to. You either have to kill the botchling, or you have to put the botchling to rest. In which case, you basically have to truck it across the Baron's Manor while it's freaking out and summoning all these other spirits to the area.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, like, you can kill it or you can exercise it and exorcise. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Exercise, yeah, that works.
I read words a lot more than I say them, so then when I try saying them, they don't come out right.
Okay, fair.
This is just encouraging more and more to actually play the Witcher games.
Oh yeah, the like in terms of like scaling up, like Witcher 1 is kind of weird and janky now. It's almost like this weird rhythm RPG because of how the combat works. They made a lot of advancements with the second one, and the third one is just this beautiful role-playing game masterpiece that I love.
Right. Well, but I mean, part of it's like how these games weren't bad when they came out necessarily.
No, but a lot of it was like the original Witcher they used a modified Neverwinter Nights engine, and there's only so much that thing could do, so there were limitations into how they could approach things.
Like, I have 1 and 2. I tried running 1, and it just wasn't working on my computer, so it's like, well, I'm gonna have to try, like, installing all of the patches for this.
Go ahead, turn off
Well,
spoilers.
and there was what was I watching the other day that we were talking about? I don't know. One of my friends and I were talking the other day about how there's a couple of old like movies and stuff where nowadays when you look at them they look like bad B movies kind of thing.
Right.
But at the time they were like actually really cool because of like contextually like what was going on then, or like they had like the coolest software around or whatever. Like Star Wars, same thing. Like I can't watch 4, 5, and 6 without dying a little bit inside because just the graphics.
Yeah. Well, I understand, but I also like grew up with them, so I'm just like, okay, I understand that this is not modern, CGI, so I'm okay with it.
But I mean, like, I didn't grow up with it as much, and I just also part of it is I'm a graphic snob, but like I can't deny that. But
apparently we look like a family. Thank you, Jude. We'll take it.
Okay, not like we're just like okay. All right. Who's what in this family?
I feel like I look like the kid. I'm looking at each of our video feeds, and maybe just because mine is smaller, my perspective, like I feel like, oh, I'm probably a child.
Yeah, but like, where was I going with this? Oh, there's a lot of games where I'm like, I wonder if like I had watched this going into it like at the time, or like if I had played this, like if it would have been scarier.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I mean, like nowadays I look at it and all I can see in Star Wars is the crappy graphics, right?
Right.
But at the time they were like the most amazing graphics ever, kind of thing.
Yeah. And it was also kind of like conceptually, no one had ever done that particular thing before. It was like taking like this Western and then this like sci-fi thing and putting it together and being like, oh, okay, we can do that. Yeah.
Oh, you know what we were talking about? We were talking about Assassin's Creed. Because Assassin's Creed, like, there's a whole bunch of things in it that, like, you go back and you play the first game and it's like, oh, well, this is shitty. It's like, no, but they were the first people to do that, ever.
Yeah.
Like, the Eagle Vision or Assassin's Vision or whatever the hell it's called.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was not a thing. Like, now, like, every single game in the planet has that. Like, Batman has that for no goddamn reason, but...
Oh yeah, they put that in Arkham Asylum.
It's like there is no excuse as to why you would have this ability. Like nothing.
Yeah.
Yes, technology.
Well, at least it kind of makes sense with Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, he is all about the tech and the gadgets and all that nonsense.
Anyways.
You're
Like,
about to go on a rant.
They very clearly stole the stole the
Absolutely.
mechanic, but
But like it looks really crappy when you watch the playthroughs and stuff. But it's like, but this was the first time it ever happened, and at
Right.
the time it was insanely cool.
Hmm. Yeah, true enough.
I've tried playing Assassin's Creed 2 so many times, and I just something stops me pretty much every single time I try to play it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've kind of fallen off the wagon with the series ever since the trilogy that was Assassin's Creed 2.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the only at most those are probably the only ones that I actually play.
Ezio was awesome.
Oh yeah, Ezio's great, but it's just like you got us like it's really weird too if you look at the series because it's just like if you play 2 and then you go play 3, there's like all this meta stuff that was going on in the background that happened that you have no idea what's happening now. It's like,
Yeah.
wait, who's dead? What happened?
Well, and it's also like I like the Assassin's Creed storylines. Don't get me wrong, but it's kind of I don't want to say campy.
Drawn
After
out.
a while, the gameplay is like they add cool new things to the gameplay, but at some point, it starts to feel a little bit samey, especially when you have like 8 or 9 games.
Well, yeah,
they're
I
not
mean,
Starting to go stale.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the last time they really like innovated with the franchise, so, like 2 was basically just a an iteration of the first one, and they didn't really do anything interesting till about Black Flag, which was like like 6 or 7 games into it at that point.
Well, they had 1, 2, Brotherhood, 3. They had like all of the extra, like the Liberation, Black Freedom's Cry, whatever.
Right.
Rogue.
All happened. So yeah. But then, like, also the whole like there are parts of it that are cool. Like I watched the gameplays for them still. I still loved was it Syndicate? Still had a really cool storyline, but it's
Mhm.
like at some point, like the gameplay is all just the same thing
Yeah.
with this game. So
Yeah.
I
And
mean, and unless you're me watching it, just watching other people play through it, that's not really worth paying however many dollars to play the same game over and over again.
right. Yeah.
I mean,
and
some
and,
games are better experienced like a movie. I'll be completely honest.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Like
Although, except apparently the Assassin's Creed movie was terrible, so.
Oh,
was
well,
it?
That, yeah.
Okay, I'll pass on that one then.
A video game movie bad?
Hey, they'll figure it out eventually, maybe.
Maybe eventually.
I mean, they figured out the superhero movies, so it just took them like 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the video games. They just part of the video game movie problem is like half of them have these terrible directors, so it's just like this wasn't going to be a good movie ever.
Oh
Right?
god.
I'm like, why would you
Didn't
pick this person for...
didn't Uwe Boll direct the Alone in the Dark movie?
I think so. Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Yeah. Just the guy who thinks he makes masterpieces, but and then throws tantrums when people hate his movies.
Right. It's just like you're no good at this. Just accept this fact. Find a new vocation.
I feel like vaguely sabotaged at some point, because it's like, why do you keep giving these like Assassin's Creed especially, like there is so much story that you could have gone with. Like you could have done just a straight up adaptation that was literally just like word for word, line for line parts of the actual games themselves, and it
Right.
would have been better than
Yeah, you could have just done the Ezio story, and people would have been like, "Yes, that was beautiful. Thank you."
People would have gone to see that.
Seriously, just give us a live action Ezio story, so we have like a version of Ezio that doesn't have like random like NPCs in the background with faces that look like Picasso painted them. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's like seriously, they have so much potential with all of these games that it's like, they're trying to. I don't know what they're trying to do, because it's like it's not. It doesn't feel like they're trying to make a good movie, but it also doesn't feel like they're trying to like tell you the story of the game or tell you anything about the game. Like half the time, the game has not the movie has nothing to do with the game.
Right.
I think literally the only appropriate video game movie, like just since like there's like the thing that video game movies have just been terrible. Really, the only time that's been appropriate was when Uwe Boll actually, of all people, made the Postal movie, which I haven't watched, but I'm assuming it's bad.
One would assume so.
Yeah, one would assume so, considering its source material.
Hmm. Yeah, that kind of brings to mind, like when I was a kid, they made the Super Mario movie. I'm just
God.
ooh, this is like when I was a kid, I didn't even understand what it was, and as an adult, I'm just like, how did this ever get made?
Yeah, I got excited when like that movie came out before I was born, and then I remember seeing like a VHS of it in like in a Blockbuster or something like that, and it's like, oh, this looks cool, and I never watched it, but then I heard it then I saw like bits of it later. I'm like, oh god, like apparently like people in the movie hated making it as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's always lovely.
Saturn, you're dating yourself. Blockbusters and VHS.
Oh yes, the Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
For my age, it's like don't pin this just on me. Like Monkee's already dated himself as well. Come on.
Hey, I'm allowed to say this. I'm the youngest person on the podcast.
By much.
Okay, but seriously though, like, one of my friends was babysitting, and she came home one day and was like, yeah, one of the kids I was babysitting just asked me what a VHS was, and I'm like, oh, I'm much too young to feel this old.
It's like a DVD in the shape of a box.
It's a legitimate question. They've never seen one, except out of a museum, maybe.
That's fair.
Did you guys ever see the video of like this guy hands his daughter a phone, like a corded phone? And
Yeah.
says, here, hang it up, and she's like, how?
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Somebody save me.
I don't understand the question.
What do you mean how? Hang up the phone.
Yeah.
The thing is, that was slightly different though, because it's like, I think that girl at the age that she was, like landline phones would have still been around.
No, I mean, not really, because like by the time I was, I don't know, 10, we were like almost everybody had gotten rid of theirs.
I still have mine.
Apparently
Like
you
my
gave
folks still have
Valère
theirs.
Whiplash Quill. Apparently you gave Valère Whiplash from all your moving about, and
Oh, my apologies.
Way to go!
but yeah, I'm like I was playing adventure games back before they had user interfaces. Just like, you're gonna type this and you're gonna learn how to spell properly, child.
Right?
Also, Valère, yes, those old Super Mario Bros. Super Show episodes. Those were a thing.
He goes look those up. I remember them fondly, but I'm like, do I want to go back and watch them? Because I might not remember them fondly anymore.
No, because your childhood goggles are much stronger than your nostalgia goggles. Don't watch it.
Okay, fair.
Sonic Adventure 2 was a good game the last time I played it when I was like 6.
Okay, to be fair, the gameplay is still fun. It's just everything else that's shit.
Yeah.
It's just all
Sorry,
the
like-
story and stuff
Yep.
is nonsense.
Yeah.
They actually, like, they
There's a
never
reason
say
why-
English lip flap to the Japanese, like, character mouthing. Or, I don't know, maybe in Japanese it's the same thing, but,
It's possible.
like, literally, like, Tails will be like, oh no, Sonic! And then his character will keep talking for, like, another, like, 10 seconds.
like the worst dub ever. You're like,
Yeah.
what is
Well-
this?
Like, apparently for the first game, when they were recording it, like, they didn't know what context they were saying the lines for, so they just sound
Right.
super, super wonky.
Oh, that's
Also, just everything in that game is like, I I will fight you! It's just like, no, nobody talks like this. Nobody in the world talks like this. What are you doing, voice actors?
You're just going to make fools of yourselves!
All right then.
The worst part is that trend's continued into like the newer games.
Yeah.
Like, the voice acting was still bad.
I'm trying to think. When was the last good Sonic game?
Sonic Colors was pretty good,
Mhm.
I thought.
Yeah, it feels like somewhere, like, there might have been a couple good ones here and there, but it's like somewhere during, like, the Sega Genesis era.
I think no Sonic Colors and I think Sonic Generations was actually pretty well received,
Mhm.
and that's one that I actually kind of want to play.
Okay.
I think Sonic Heroes or something like that. I don't know. One of my friends had it. It was actually the thing I have with the Sonic games is they're actually fun to play. They're just painful to witness.
Yeah, it's just like, what is this?
You know? There's a reason why I liked Shadow the Hedgehog when I was like when I played it is because I was like 9 and just didn't understand things.
Right.
Looking back on it now, it's like, oh god, this is so cringy.
There is some value in games where it's just like, it is cringy, it is stupid and campy, but that's the point. I mean, like,
Yeah.
there are entire movies and stuff, like, I feel like it's harder for games to do that kind of thing, because...
Well, yeah, because it's like I've said before, like, other medium, you can at least kind of just passively enjoy the nonsense, whereas in video games, you have to, you know, fight your way through the nonsense in terms of gameplay. You're like, this isn't just dumb, it's also a terrible game.
And aside from all of that, then you also end up with, like, you know, a movie's 3 hours, a TV show's, like, I don't know, that depends on the TV show, but, and a book is however long it takes you to get through it, but, like, a game is, like, days of investment.
8 hours, 10 hours, 100 hours, you know, just depends. Yeah. Yeah. It always confuses me, too, when people are like, with those, like, big epic RPGs, people are like, yeah, it's not very good for, like, the first 20 hours, but then you start to get into it. I'm just like, I could play, like, 3 other games in 20 hours that are actually good and satisfying.
I think that exact same thing. It's just like, why would I waste, like, 100 hours of my life, like, playing a game that isn't good until the last 20 minutes?
Right, exactly.
It's like, but I mean, at some point, it's just like, okay, well then fine. Like, somebody do a patch where I could just skip to the 20-hour mark. Because...
Yes, it's like, where's somebody's save game? Let me start there.
It's like, I don't understand why. Like, when you're making a video game, if any of y'all are ever planning on making a video game, your first part has to be at least vaguely entertaining. Because otherwise, I don't care how good the rest of it is. I will not continue playing. I will go look up a Let's Play later and, like, sell my game.
Oh, yeah. Well, from what they've determined over time is people generally need to be engaged within, like, the first 15 minutes of the game if they're kind of, like, they haven't decided whether this is a thing they're going to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, we have a huge shelf of video games at home that we just, half of them we never really touched after we started playing them the first time, like, and because we just bought them all at, like, GameStop for, like,
Right.
$3 when GameCube went out the window. We just, like, bought all the GameCube games they had.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But and some of them are like, I don't know why Michael picked them up, because I was like, what the, one of them's like a surgeon game, anyways, but
Surgeon
like,
Simulator?
yeah, it
It's
was
like Trauma Center.
it was just, I don't even know. But I never played it. I, like, legitimately just never touched it. But, like, the Fantastic Four game that he got, like, it was based on the movies that had come out, like, not the recent one, the old ones.
Okay.
So you know it's good.
Like, the one with the Silver Surfer was the second one.
Uh-huh.
And, like, the first, I remember it got better, but, like, the first hour of, like, play that we did was just, like, it could not have been more boring. Like, I was, like, actually, like, if I did not have to, like, move the controller, I was going to fall asleep.
Right.
Like, and I understand that it's, like, sometimes you have to slog through, like, a tutorial or something like that. But like, I don't know, Portal was like 90% tutorial, and it wasn't boring.
Right, yeah. It's all in how you present it. It's like if you can make it interesting and engaging, you're like, oh, this is just another part of the game. It's not just like, oh, this is something I have to sit through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
like
unskippable tutorials. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, like literally, the majority of Portal is just tutorials for the mechanics that you're gonna use to basically get to the last part of the game.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, it's like what was the cut the string or whatever, like the little
Mhm.
game where you like feed the candy to the little green monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like these kinds of games where it's like they show you how to do one mechanic and then they introduce another mechanic and then they introduce it. Like that's a good way to do a tutorial.
Right, yeah.
Like, instead of just slamming it all at me at once and then like I'm not gonna remember in an hour how to do that thing that you told me like an hour ago that I didn't use until now. Like.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like how MMOs have kind of figured this out in that they'll generally be like, okay, here's the interfaces, how you move backwards and forwards. This is all the stuff. Now go, be free. We'll tell you what to do when you level up.
Yeah, we'll tell you what to do when you get to the point where you need it.
Right, exactly. It's like, hey, you found an enemy. This is how you attack.
Yeah, it's like, we're not going to teach you how to shear sheep if you're not going to do that action.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
but then they'll give you a reason to do the action.
Mhm.
Yep. Dark Souls did that in like the most Dark Souls appropriate way, where it's just like there's just like notes. It's like, oh, read the note, read the note, read the note. It's like, oh, you can do this with this button, do this with this button, and then something will immediately happen where you have to use it.
Yeah.
But it's more in a sense where it's like, you can do this, good luck, and then just leaves you alone.
Yeah, with 2 in particular, it's like you basically, once you get your character set up, you go out there and it's just like it doesn't even tell you that there's a tutorial out there. There's just like signposts that you can find, and if
Yeah.
There's nobody here. Everybody's dead. But they kind of showed you what to do along the way.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
okay, quite on you. People be nonsensical in the chat.
What are you guys saying?
You literally get a timeout.
Yeah. Or, okay, you want to know, like, what I really love, like, for casual games is that they seem to have the whole tutorial thing down really well. Like, I don't know why. I guess it's because they are aiming it at really casual people, but, like, when you end up with games where it's like you don't really have to have a tutorial, you could kind of just, like, click around and figure it out yourself. Kind of thing. I really like when it starts out with that, and then it like actually gives you like advice as the game gets more complex. Because then it feels less like, I don't know, it feels less like a tutorial, more like just wandering around.
Right. Okay. Well, I think we're probably at a good point here where we can wrap things up. So. Okay. So you guys go ahead, let people know where they can find you on the internet, and we will call it a day.
I'm on Tumblr at Anony Mouse Writer, ANONY -mouse -writer.
And I'm also on Tumblr at Silent Watchman, one word, and man is singular. Just have to clarify for because we had an issue the first time.
Yep. And you can find me pretty much everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch at MonkeeBoom, 2 E's, no Y. And thanks everyone for joining. Y'all have a good day now.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.